Don't drive them. They're gonna complain. How are you?
Meetings and more chairs is a really good thing. I'm Claudia Garcia Brazo. I'm the president of the San Diego Domestic Violence Council. We're very, very excited. In the council, we're only doing 4 in-person meetings this year as we transition out of COVID. And they are regional. So we started with our North County, which is very successful. Thanks to you for joining us. This is our second here at South Bay. We plan to do one in August in East County, and then October for our launch for DV Awareness Month will be in Central. Thank you so much for joining us. We have a packed agenda today, so I'm not going to keep my words short. So this is a bittersweet meeting for me in that my 4-year term is coming to an end and a lot has happened. Many of you know I was elected DV Council President in the fall of 2019. I was ready to go. I had tons of ideas. I was getting them started. And then the pandemic hit and we all shut down. And so I thought, okay, well, together with my steering, what do we do now? As we all know, the pandemic did not shut down crime. I'm a prosecutor. I've been a prosecutor for 20 years, prosecuting cases mostly of domestic violence and child abuse. So the cases kept on coming. So I was going to work. I was still going to the office because I was managing that team. But also domestic violence is now happening in closed doors with no outlet. And what were we going to do? And that is the beauty of the DV Council. We mobilize thanks to all of you. We started putting out those resources, those virtual trainings, thanks to a lot of my steering members that are here. And we let everyone know that the services may look different, but we're still here. And so proud of what we've done. As now we are coming out of that, we are gearing more to the in-person. It's time for new leadership. It's time for someone spectacular, and I do mean spectacular, to take over and really take the DV Council in yet another direction. And I am so proud. So we did it a little different this time. Instead of waiting until the 4 years were done to elect someone and then just say, here, go at it, right? Brilliant idea to elect our new president 6 months before my term ended to have a transition period. And again, that is going to be amazing because when I do hand over the baton at our launch event in October, she is going to be ready to go and just hit the ground running. Not that she isn't now, but again, it takes a little transition. I am very, very proud of who the next president is going to be. She comes with great accolades, and I'm going to let her introduce herself to you. But I am very proud and I'm very, very excited for where this DV Council that's very near and dear to my heart is going to go. I'm not leaving, of course. I am now the executive director of One Safe Place. If you haven't visited One Safe Place in San Marcos, please come. It's an amazing place. We've already surpassed in the 10 months, actually 9.5 that we've been open. We have now surpassed 2,000 victims that have walked through our doors. Just to give you an idea of what we're doing at the need. The need. We need to regionalize these. And if I know my boss, Summer Stephan, she's going to make that happen. She's pretty spectacular. So again, I'm going to be around. I'm going to be here to support always. But I'm so excited to introduce to you Dr. Vanessa Rodriguez.
Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you, Claudia. Thank you for passing the torch 6 months early as I acclimate into this new role. My name is Dr. Vanessa Rodriguez. I am a psychologist, licensed marriage and family therapist. And I have been doing this work for 18 years. I have chosen to provide treatment, crisis intervention, avid open doors. To our next guest. Pardon the interruption. I have devoted my life, my professional career to ending domestic violence. But on a global lens, essentially the work has been all about abuse, ending abuse, ending power, and healing trauma. And for the past 8 years, I've been working specifically with first responders that have also been impacted by trauma and abuse and domestic violence. So I come into this role with a very unique perspective that I do not only know what it's like to hear the stories from the victims, survivors, as well as offenders, but also from the people, everybody in this room that we serve. And there's a lot of vicarious trauma that has been happening, not only, but the families that we treat and that we serve, but among us. And so I take this position with great honor, with great joy. I have a lot of anxiety because you guys, this moment, the fact that I'm standing here in front of you, it's like pinch me. I really can't even believe it. It's nice to see familiar faces. And so I really want to demonstrate to you guys that I am passionate about this work. I'm committed to doing this work, and I have very clear intentions with doing this work with all of you. So when I was told to speak today before a wonderful panel, full transparency, you guys, I typed up, I don't know how many different speeches and rough drafts about what should I talk about? Talk about statistics, talk about the pandemic, talk about the resources, but you guys already know all that information. So I really want to take this time to share with you my professional career from beginning to now. And for those that I see, I'm sorry, this is redundant, but I do see a lot of familiar faces, and I'm going to be seeing your guys' faces at minimum for the next 2 years, very much. So I started doing this work, like I said, 18 years ago in the courthouses in Hawaii. I was getting my undergrad, and at the time I was doing court outreach to anybody petitioning for a temporary restraining order. And while the petitioners were waiting to have their restraining orders either be signed off by a judge or not, I was providing outreach. Hi, come on. Welcome. I was providing outreach, providing crisis intervention, providing psychological education about domestic violence. And then a couple weeks later, I would then accompany them to court, to their hearing. As we all know, a lot of the victim survivors are isolated and don't have resources, legal resources. So I accompany them to their court hearing. I was in my early 20s at that time. And I really hit the ground running, so to speak, doing that work. When I moved back to San Diego, which I'm from, born and raised in Paradise Hills, that's next door. I started working for Center for Community Solutions. And in fact, that was, 2006 maybe, 5, that I had attended the first Domestic Violence Council meeting as I was on the committee, the Shelter and Support Services Committee, which again, pinch me in full circle, is I'm shocked. But, so when I had moved back here as at Center Community Solutions, I held a position as a hotline and volunteer manager. That position no longer exists, but essentially my duties at that time, I was managing DD Links, the 24-hour domestic violence hotline. I was supervising the SART volunteers and also the 60-hour crisis intervention training. At that time, I was getting my master's degree in marriage and family therapy. That role was a supervisory position, and I needed to get clinical hours. So I did my practicum with South Bay Community Services, go South Bay, with their juvenile diversion program at the Chula Vista Police Department, which I was working at the courthouse in Hawaii and then working at a station. For those that are in law enforcement, I consider myself a first responder. That's where I got my first taste working with that culture. And I loved it. I loved it. After there, I started working for New Alternatives, worked in a group home. So you guys kind of, if you look at it from the lens of abuse, trauma, domestic violence, I was working with them, helping them in the legal process. Now at South Bay Community Services, I was working with youth, first-time juvenile offenders that were impacted by domestic violence, family violence, child abuse, and then ultimately at New Alternatives, I was living, not living, but I was working where the children that were impacted by family violence, domestic violence, child abuse. So I was getting, my land was growing and deepening. At that point, I had gotten licensed, and then I wanted more. You guys, I really wanted more. And so I started working as a PERT clinician for El Cajon Police Department. I did that for many years, and I don't think you can get any more up close and personal than being 10-8 on scene. So I know all of the 415s, 245, 647, no 1016s, I know 11, I know all the codes. So in that role, I saw DD front and center, crisis intervention. Like I said, it doesn't get any more broad than that. And during that time, I was working on my dissertation, and in fact, on a lot of C7s, I was working on the study I had done was on the PERT program and the importance of training law enforcement officers on crisis intervention. And from there, I decided to go to Kaiser. This was, so when I was doing PERT, this was before, I think it was Trayvon Martin, was it? Alongo? No, I was before. So I think that was on before Alongo, where I saw the immediate shift. We would go on scene and they would be videotaping me and cursing me. I'm like, I'm a clinician. I have a pen and a notepad, and I respect all those that are 10-8 responding to DD calls. We all know that DD is the most lethal cases that law enforcement officers respond to, that dispatchers take, that fire respond to, first aid, the hospitals, we all know this. And it scared me. It scared me. So I went to Kaiser. I went to Kaiser. Was assigned as a hybrid therapist, which essentially meant I could see any kind of client or patient walking through the door. They assigned me as the transgender specialist. So I was responsible for essentially authorizing and approving gender reassignment. Past probationary period, you guys, and I didn't like it. It's my personal, I just didn't like it. I like this. I like crisis, I like advocacy, I like victim work, I like trauma, I like abuse. I know that sounds really dark, but it truly is. You guys have been doing this for 18 years. I'm not fatigued. I'm not burnt out. I'm vicariously traumatized. I have nightmares. I can't sleep sometimes. Sometimes one of the best safe coping skills. I'm human. But I am not exhausted. I'm not exhausted because I really, really, truly feel this is my passion. It's my purpose. It's my calling. And so when I quit Kaiser, I decided that I want to do what I'm telling you, my passion, my calling, which is abuse and trauma, domestic violence, family violence, relationship abuse, intimate partner violence, child abuse, sexual assault. Yeah. So, but I also got a lot of great experience working with law enforcement and first responders. And again, really understanding the vicarious trauma that comes from the work that we all do here. So I would say, just to make it easy, about 50% of my practice was doing DV work. And then the other half, I was contracting with the Counseling Team International. And I pretty much responded to the majority of critical incidents in the county. Officer-involved shootings, in custody deaths, baby drownings, DV-related calls, child abuse cases. So I would go on scene and really support, now provide crisis intervention, advocacy, psych education to the first responders. And then I would go a couple of days later and do critical incident stress debriefings and really process the type of exposure that this, an impact that this has on all of us, because it's heavy. And I'm telling you something, you don't know. It's really, really heavy work. And so we need support. The victim survivors, they need support, we need support too. And so I feel like I really have a unique lens with that, which I'm hoping to really elevate for the council. I do want to mention one thing, which I don't know why after I got licensed, immediately after I got licensed, I had started Safe Solutions. Safe Solutions is Esmeralda. Safe Solutions is my baby that really started with the 52-week DVRP. You guys know the rest, VIP, DVRP. Because I have been doing so much victim work, I felt that I was getting a little traumatized and hypervigilant. And so I really wanted to push my clinical skills and grow and start working with the offenders, perpetrators, batters, whatever word you see comfortably to fit for you. And I still do that work today. I still do that work today, and I love it. I think it's extremely valuable because of no matter how many people that I have worked with, treated over the years, that have been impacted by violence and abuse and assault. That's great, that's fantastic, but if we don't put the effort and energy and quality treatment into those that are abusing, the problem's never gonna go away. The problem's never gonna go away. So I still dedicate my clinical work to both ends. In addition to, like I said, the work that I do for first responders and law enforcement and police and fire and dispatchers and all of that. So, which leads me to here, you guys. A couple months ago, I had shared a personal story with the committee prior to them electing me into this new role. I am a survivor. And again, coming from here to here, I cannot say enough, you guys, with sincerity, that this is, it's not only meaningful for me professionally, it's meaningful for me personally. And so I take this role extremely, extremely serious. And I can promise you that I will continue to do the work, stay committed, be patient, and have compassion. I feel that that is a common theme that I share in treatment with both sides. Whenever we do education on the cycle of abuse, everyone asks, how do we get out? How do we get out? How do I stay out? I say you need 4 things. You gotta do the work, and work is hard and it's different for everybody. You gotta be committed, because sometimes people gas out. Sometimes people gas out, because the work is hard. You gotta be patient, you gotta have some self-compassion. And so that is what I can devote to you all, to the council, to all of the committees, to the community. And so my hope for the future, loose plans, you guys, I have 2 fingers, is I want to use all of my lived experience, my professional experience, and really share it with you guys. Because I'm a psychotherapist and I like psychodynamics, and I really want to educate everybody and elevate everyone's understanding. You all know the 101s. We all know the basics about the trauma that occurs with family violence. And so I want to support you guys, us. I want to educate, I want to train. I also want to connect as much as I possibly can with every single resource that we have in the community. And I also do want to work on legislation. I've met with Mia and OVP. There is stuff brewing with stalking legislation. I know Claudia was instrumental in adding coercion to the penal code. So guys, the options are limitless, in my opinion. And I truly, truly believe that, because I don't know how the hell I did. Like, I would never thunk this in my wildest dreams. And so I really want to empower all of us together to really be unified in a collective way to end abuse, you guys, to end abuse and to heal from the trauma inflicted from abuse. And so I am happy to be here. I'm happy to serve you. I am a straight shooter. You guys can contact me, email me. I'm available. I do have a couple offices here in South Bay. We're a small but very mighty team that really do quality work. And I cannot wait to go and meet every one of you in your respective expert fields and figure out how we can coordinate and collaborate together and fulfill this mission of ending abuse.
Are we not in good hands? Yeah, we're in terrific hands. So
again, I love what I'm hearing. Vicarious trauma, emotional fatigue, self-care, those are relatively new phenomena, new concepts that we're just talking about. At the DA's office, some of us that have been working family protection cases like me for 20 years, we all, it's a joke, but it's true. We don't say that we're all PTSD diagnosable just because of all we've seen and all we've done, but we do have to practice self-care. And I can't emphasize that enough. Whatever that means to you, please, 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 that's something we have to do. But I'm excited for the council's future. I'm excited where we're headed, and it's a great thing. So now shifting gears a little bit. In my career, I have worked many years in East County, so very familiar with East County players. I worked many years out of the Vista Courthouse and in North County, so very familiar with the North County players. I was transferred downtown, so again, many years downtown. I was very familiar with the downtown players. I never had the privilege of working in South Bay. And so this is another benefit, if you will, of being the DD Council president. Because being DD Council president afforded me that connection. When I got here, I knew very little about SBCS. I, for the first time, heard Casa Familia. I had never worked with National PD, Chula Vista PD, in San Isidro Health, and all our South County that I was told you should meet, you know, these players, but let's do this. And then of course I thought, why don't we have a South County DD coalition? We have a North County DD coalition, we have an East County DD coalition. Let's do that in South. But first, I want to get to know who's in South. And these 4 years, I am so pleased. SBCS has been phenomenal. I have spoken at Casa Familia regularly. I'm meeting San Isidro Health. I've gotten to know our fellow officers. So that has been a bonus from this position because the work you do here with the multidisciplinary team, what Mia does with the response, that is unique in the entire county. It's amazing that we have that here. And something that we should replicate throughout San Diego County. And I don't know why we haven't, and that's something that we want to continue working on. But this is a unique space because if you do know them, if you don't know them, if you're just getting to know them, this panel here is it. I mean, this is where we will really truly learn what is available for us in South Bay, where all of those survivors, all of those victims, those people that come to us that need help, that maybe it's outside of our bandwidth. Where do we send them? What do we do? How do we help them? And that's something that this is why this is so instrumental. And I apologize and thank you for joining us here. So I'm going to hand it over to our panel to talk to us about what happens here in South Bay, who they are, what services they can provide, and what we can learn from that. So I'm going to hand it over to Annalicia.
Thank you. So I'm Annalicia Miki Chow, and I'm so excited to be representing SBCS today. I am the program director of our domestic violence shelter and supportive services, and that means a lot of different programming under the umbrella, which we'll have a chance to share a little bit more with our amazing panel. But before did anyone want to take this seat? No. Okay. I'm really, really excited because like Claudia mentioned, our response team is unique to the whole county. And I'm going to be sharing a little bit about the history of our response team. We have members who are on the 24/7 team, part of our day team, our management, DA's office, and PD, and I'll let them introduce themselves individually. So we'll start with PD, and then I'm going to go into some history on our program.
Jason Edlin, Chula Vista PD, been with the department 18 years now. Currently Sergeant George.
I'm Freddie Dominguez. I'm one of the Family Protection Unit detectives at Chula Vista PD. I've been with the department a little bit over 9 years.
I'm Selena Perez. I'm a victim advocate with the District Attorney's Office in the South Bay branch. I've been an advocate for about 6 years.
I'm Marcy Miller. I'm part of management. I oversee our response team, our advocates at the PD, and help out wherever's needed. And I've been with South Bay going on almost 9 years. I started off on our response team and then switched over to lead the team.
My name is Nayeli Benalve. I am a domestic violence advocate with SBCS. I'm stationed at the PD and work at the DAVE team for DVRT.
My name is Albert Servin. I work with DVRT. I've been working with domestic violence response team for 25 years. I was second one hired for the job. Still here, and still loving it.
So my name is Mia Hall. I am also with Albert on the response team. I've been with the team almost 9 years. I was actually hired alongside Marcy. And I also work for the county as in the Office of Violence Prevention. So that's why you see me wearing more than one hat. So I do frontline at night and on weekends, and then the daytime, I'm working behind the scenes trying to make it better for those of us that work the front lines.
So SBCS's partnership with CVPD started back in 1991, and it was really a project to create a partnership so that law enforcement could stick to their law enforcement role, and then there was support services on scene. And so since 1991, we've been having this team that is 24/7, 365 days a year. So we have 14 members on our response team, and they're all trained as DV advocates. I'll let them explain what they do when they're on scene, but we have noticed in recent years, prior to COVID, if you look at 2019, we were responding to roughly 1,200 calls in the South Bay region. Then you go to 2020, it increased to about 1,300. And then you look at 2021 and we're at around 1,600. So in 2 years, there was a 37% increase in the calls that we're responding to just in the South Bay. And you think just those who reached out to law enforcement, because the phone line that our team responds to is only for law enforcement to call and local hospitals. So you can imagine, we know in this room, right, that not all victims are reaching out to law enforcement for support. So that number is only the ones that we've responded to. So we know there's a lot more incidents going on. And again, just in the South Bay region. So what's really unique and exciting that I like to share about SBCS is that we do have a pipeline of services for domestic violence. So for the purposes of today, we're not going to go into too much of like the law enforcement role or the prosecution role. We're really going to share how that all comes together in this pipeline of services through SBCS. And so we start with our response team and helping out on scene with law enforcement. And then that baton gets passed off to our day team, who provides the ongoing advocacy. And then if there's shelter and housing needs, then it goes to our shelter and housing team. We have counseling support. We have contracts with Legal Aid Society of San Diego for legal services where they can connect in-house to their different resources. But this did start with a partnership between CVPD and SBCS, but over the years we've expanded. And I'm looking at Rebecca because we have a partnership with the Sheriff's Department. So we do also service IB sheriffs or IB area and support the sheriffs. We also respond to National City. So we have partnership with NCPD and then also San Diego PD for the San Ysidro area of the city of San Diego. Okay. So I'm going to go ahead and start with my questions. And this is, again, just to give you an overall view of how this whole pipeline kind of comes into play in responding to incidents of DV in the South region. Okay. So first up is CVPD. Can you explain just what is the process of utilizing the response team on call for incidents of DV?
Yeah, I'll start off. So essentially, anybody in patrol, if we go to some kind of domestic violence call, we determine that the person needs services, then we will absolutely call South Bay Community Services and the DV FVRT response team. And an advocate is there within 20 to 25 minutes. It's a huge resource for us because we encounter these victims who we can get them services immediately. Witnessed it numerous times in my career. When you're able to provide services to victims immediately, they're much more likely to take advantage of those things. So being able to get somebody into a hotel room on a temporary basis, being able to tell them that somebody's going to walk you through the restraining order process, it just gives the victims a sense of taking control back and gives them a little more sense of having some power now. The advocates that come out will also help us as far as doing any kind of CPS referral, child welfare services referral. So that saves us time as well. Like I said, it gives them an immediate lifeline, if you will, to have somebody that they can reach out to and call if they need something. From a control standpoint, it's definitely huge. Agent Dominguez works in our family protection unit. So he sees the back end things of how South Bay Community Services is very beneficial.
Do you want me to go into that?
Sure, yeah.
So my unit will typically see reports if somebody was taken into custody right then and there. Maybe within 48 hours, we will see a report come to our desks that have to be handled. And typically the first thing that we're looking for is if the family violence response team was contacted. That is huge for us. Yeah, the services, yes, the legal mandates that South Bay Community Services gets to help us with, but then also too, just the follow-up, right? The ability to take an incident and be able to see it a little further through. The first question I typically ask somebody that I'm calling is have you spoken to South Bay Community Services or have they reached out? A lot of times it's that they've received a voicemail or they got some sort of notification and they haven't yet. And I share this a lot with victims of domestic violence, is that the legal system, like the good and the bad and everything in between, is going to be just a little piece of their story. But South Bay Community Services can reach so much more than that and can really answer and be a part of a much larger journey, a much longer journey. And I'm not naive enough to think that the case is the only thing on their mind. For me, that is the only thing on my mind. For them, they have a million other things before that preliminary hearing that I'm so worried about. And South Bay Community Services gets to address those needs, gets to get a handle on felt needs. And so even a little self-serving down the road, that family, that entire family, moms, sisters, relatives, friends, are so much more engaged even with our process of coming to court and supporting that loved one, because that loved one is now being supported themselves. So that's huge for us. And then even the cases that sometimes, unfortunately, the volume of our cases, I'm looking at my partner in the back there. Child welfare services, I don't even know how many referrals we get per week. Criminal cases, we're all handling upwards of 50 plus in our caseload. So unfortunately, there are cases that take some time to get to. And one of the best things that can happen, and we have that kind of relationship with our advocates, is they'll come up to our office and they'll ask us, have you spoken to that victim? You know, they're reaching out, they want to know what's going on with their case, and it helps keep us a little bit on our toes as well, in a good way, because a lot of times when that victim reaches out or there's a generic number that they're trying to reach, they get frustrated, they give up. You know, but if they have an advocate that they have right then and there that they can reach out to, and that advocate now reaches back out to us, those reports that took 2 weeks, 3 weeks to get to us, we get to jump on them. We get to show them that we are invested, that we can respond still. That just because it's been 2 weeks doesn't mean that we can't step in and do something for them. So yeah, I can't speak highly enough of South Bay Community Services and what they do on the back end for us.
I did just want to add that because of the partnership over the years, it is part of the patrol officers' requirements to call us out for incidents of DV. It's not kind of left to their discretion, or it's not optional. We go in to do roll call trainings at all of the jurisdictions and, you know, share with them. Our response team will be on scene in 15 to 20 minutes. So once you've kind of initiated your process, we get the call to our line, whether it's from dispatch or directly from the officer. We get the address and our staff is en route. So that is one thing I wanted to point out. We also do take the lead on child welfare reports. We take that kind of off their plate, which I think is I'm sure helpful for you all since you have a lot of other things going on.
And APS.
And APS as well. Thank you, Marcy. I think another thing that I'm sure people can understand is that victims don't always want to share all the details with law enforcement. You know, they have their reasons and they might be more comfortable in someone in plain clothing, right? So our advocates offer that level of comfort, I would say. A situation comes to mind where, or an incident where a victim had urinated themselves and they really weren't comfortable going into detail, all the details of their incident with the officer, but they felt comfortable to tell our team. So sometimes we're getting information that's helpful to the case that maybe they didn't feel comfortable sharing in that moment with law enforcement. And so that's a unique part of our partnership. And one of the benefits of having an advocate there on scene. You also think about, you know, in other areas, regions of the county where this kind of team doesn't exist, it's really like, you know, they're provided the resources on who to follow up with the providers around the county. But there's not someone like really following up and saying, hey, this is your warm handoff. I received the details of your case. This is what I'm here to help you with. It's really up to them to follow up. And so that's the nice part of our system that we have, is that there is that warm handoff next up to the day team and they follow up on the case. So I am going to ask two of our response team members a question, and then feel free to add whatever details you want. But can you share with us what you do in your role as a member of the response team in responding to incidents of DV?
Okay, I'll go first. So the first thing is we're going to get a call, and it can come in at 2 o'clock in the morning. And it's going to be dispatch or the 911 operator saying that officers need you at, and they'll give you the address. And then 9 times out of 10, I'm already dressed. I go to bed in a t-shirt and yoga pants, and I have slip-on shoes that I slide on, and I grab my coat's already in the car. And I'm heading out to scene. And the first thing I do when I get to scene is I meet with the officer. One, because the officer needs to let dispatch know that we've arrived on scene. And then I want to talk to the officer to find out what happened. I never want to walk into the house without any kind of background information. I kind of want to know what I'm walking into, because I have walked into some horrific scenes. And so it's good to at least know what I'm about to face beforehand. Plus, it helps with the rapport with the officers. Like, there are several officers that really get excited when I come on scene. They're like, "Yay, it's me!" And so they get excited. And so I go on scene, and once I talk with the officers, then I go sit down with the client. And the first thing I do is I just ask them to take a deep breath, that I'm here to help them. And then I just basically ask them to tell me how we got here. And I don't ask, and I just let them talk. And then I just literally take notes and I just listen. Because the idea is most victims just sometimes, for the first time, they just need to get it out. And yes, it comes in all garbled and it doesn't come in any kind of order. And it's only when they're done that I go back and try to fine tune it. And I get into details, you know, if there's kids in the home, we'll talk about their kids, like where do they go to school? And I try to make it as comfortable as possible, you know, because some of this information we need in order to do a CWS report. I need to know what school they go to. Do they have an IEP? Do they have a 504 plan? For those of you that don't know, that's a behavior plan that's at the school system that's separate from an IEP, but that's good information. You know, do they have any mental health issues? Are the kids on any kind of medication? Just information to try to help us paint a better picture, so that when I call Child Welfare Services and I can give them that information, now both South Bay and Child Welfare can provide the best foot forward for this family during this traumatic time. And so I do let the victim know that I have to report to Child Welfare as a mandated reporter, but I tell them that they're not the perpetrator, their significant other is, or their ex is. And so Child Welfare is going to come on board and try to help them protect their kids. And that's what we're gonna try to do. And so I come with that attitude, showing child welfare as a partner, not as a threat, because I want them to be open with them so that we can protect the kids. Because ultimately for that, that's child welfare's goal. My goal is to protect the victim, but how can I get them two to work together? I gotta show child welfare in a positive light. And so I kind of do that. I also talk to them about next steps, like what's gonna happen when we're done here, who's gonna call them, and I give them an approximate time. It might not be tomorrow, but you'll probably have someone contact you within the next couple of days. And then, and it should probably come in later in the afternoon. And is it okay if they leave a message on your voicemail? Because that's important in case they miss something. So that they, does he have access to your voicemail? Oh, he does. Okay, well then we won't leave a message. We'll just call. If we don't reach you, we'll just call you back. Because I've got to tell the day team that don't leave a message because he can access her voicemail. So things like that. That's kind of what I do. And then I ask if she has any questions for me, or if he has any questions for me, because my victims all come in different shapes and sizes. And when we're all done, and I've given them the resources and provided additional support and listened to them and ask them if they have any questions, then I'll check out with the officer. And if there's anything that was divulged to me that is of immediate security, I'll let the officers know. Like if I feel like he has access or she has access to a weapon, they actually need an emergency protective order because of the severity, then I'll say, we need to contact the judge. I need to get an EPO immediately. That's when I'll have to talk to the officer and start advocating on that side. So before I leave, I make sure that there's a safety plan in place, that the victim has a way to get out, has somewhere to go, and has a plan. It's kind of challenging when you're dealing with the homeless population, but I always use the fire station. For those of you that know, that is the best place to go if you need help. There's always somebody in that firehouse 24/7. So if you ever need help, you roll up to the station, lay on your horn, someone's gonna come out and help you. It's the best thing to do.
Thank you, Mia. And Albert, as he mentioned earlier, has 25 years on our team. So a whole, history with victims and supporting them in their time of crisis. So anything you wanted to add?
Basically, what I do is what Mia just said. This crisis intervention, we arrive there, we try to determine what are the needs, immediate needs for the person of the survivor. And one of the major items is safety for that person and their children, if there are children present. We have the ability to place them in a safe location right there and then. We have ability to take them, transport them to a safe place. So if that is a need, we can provide that. We also try to do the safety planning. And one of the issues about safety planning is that you can say the safety plan to someone, but sometimes it doesn't register. So what I try to do is do it in a conversation, have a place to go, know where you're going to go, practice going there. Go to a friend's house or tell your neighbor when you hear noises, dial 911, call the police, or your parents or friend's house. Have your clothing or a bag ready to go. Have your ID, your keys to your car in a safe place where only you know where they're at. Have important documents in that bag so you can take them and run if you need to do that. The other thing we share with them is that if you need assistance obtaining a restraining order, the day team can assist you with that process, and we can basically hold your hand and go through the process with you to help you get this restraining order against this person. Frequently, I say to them, a restraining order is something good to have and not needed, than need it and not have it. So I go ahead and explain the need of a restraining order. The other thing too is there's this the 17 red flags of domestic violence, somebody the potential of being violent against you. I share that with them, and I have it in English and Spanish. And I always go for the three red flags. Look at this. I'm sure this person you're with has more than three. So perhaps you want to look at that and start thinking about what you're going to do. One thing you need to have in mind is that not if he comes back or is when he comes back. Prepare yourself for that moment, what's going to happen. Always be ready to go. Frequently, we tell you what we share with everyone, what we do on scene, but I personally like to share that we do have success stories where the survivor has actually reached out and the perpetrator has been arrested and impounded, rather placed in jail for good. And-
Say that.
Great words.
Okay, impounded. And the person, the survivor, is taking services, or accepting services from us, from SBCS. In order for me to make a difference in somebody's life, I try to plant a seed of some sort, something for them to remember, something that happened. For example, always be in your best behavior because you never know when you're going to create a memory. Recently, we had a success story. So you planted, I planted something, that seed was germinated, and my partner, the team, picked it up, and we're moving forward. Thank you for allowing me to share this experience with you.
There's one thing I want to add to, kind of being on scene gives us a unique perspective. When you're in an office, you can create a safety plan, but when you're in that person's home, you can create a really unique personalized safety plan. There's been so many times that I've seen a door jamb is broken, a window pane is broken, a window's broken, you're on a second story apartment, you know, and having that really personalized perspective allows you to tailor and walk kind of through the house. Sometimes when there's a lot of safety, we'll walk through the house and kind of look to see what, you know, what our options are here. What can we get their mind working on and thinking? Because they might not remember it when I walk out of there, but hopefully they're going to remember it if it comes down to when they need it. And so I think that's a really amazing part of us being in their home and kind of seeing everything. There'll be times where doors and windows and things like is their only escape route, and they'll be blocked by a big piece of furniture. And we can suggest maybe you move this so you have clear access to, you know, getting out this window. And then I know you guys, the same thing. There have been times when perpetrators return to the scene while we're there. And so sometimes I think in my mind, gosh, if they'd cleared the call and hadn't been waiting for us to finish up what we're doing, that perp may have come back. PD swoops in, apprehends them, takes them, and, you know, they stay on scene with us. They provide that constant support. We're partners there on scene. And so we're not walking into that home alone. We're not walking into it blind. They're there to have our back when those situations arise.
Adding on that, I appreciate it myself extremely for the police officer who remains with us. I feel safe, you know, because the only thing I have as a weapon is my pencil. That's it. And I'm stuck. If he comes back, I'm stuck. So I appreciate your presence and staying with us.
Yeah, a couple more things just keep coming to mind. Like I know Marcy goes on scene as well. She covers part of our day shifts. And I know one time a victim disclosed to you about guns in the home that they hadn't disclosed to officers. So, you know, that's another example of information that is sometimes shared with us and not with law enforcement.
45 unregistered weapons in a closet.
Yes, that was in National.
And I had
City.
asked
Yeah.
the officer, I said, are there any weapons in the home? It's part of our questions that we ask. Officer said, no. And the
He said,
victim disclosed
"Actually,"
it to
yeah.
me, and he was not happy because he had to catalog 45 weapons. Samurai swords, handguns, shotguns, but at least that victim was safe.
If I can
Safer.
speak on that though,
Yeah.
you know, for us, we have certain legal mandates as officers, as law enforcement for domestic violence calls. And believe it or not, we're not perfect. And we're not robots, and sometimes questions get missed. And that actually provides a great sense of comfort as well for us as an agency, as a unit and as individuals, that we're covered by somebody coming in fresh out of bed at 2 o'clock in the morning that has that question in mind, because this might be my 10th call and I was supposed to be off 2 hours ago and I can't believe what's happened, and let me go through these, and you catch 45 guns, which the untold countless lives that could be saved from that. That's a huge part of it as well for us. There are mandates that when we do roll call training, and we're going to be doing this at an upcoming roll call training, there are certain mandates, things we need to do, things we should not do, things we should do. And whenever detectives that have been selected for these units go to these classes, that's the first game we play. Can you get all these right? And we still can't get these all right because there are so many. And so the fact that we have a partner that comes in, it's huge for us.
Detective, so does the taken by the response team get incorporated into your report?
So, and I was actually going to bring that up a little bit. I don't want to.
No, go ahead.
There is a little bit of the confidentiality that we have to be careful with. What's that?
A lot bit.
A lot bit. I'm gonna say a little bit because I love to ask questions.
And I love to tell him, no, I can't share that.
So it really is, I mean, I would say it's victim dependent, on how much information we're going to get. And so if they're willing to share it with us, if the victim is, the survivor is, then we're more than glad to incorporate that and to have some of that be part of our report. The advocate that goes out at night is listed on our initial report that patrol will list. And that's one of the very first things that I look at as a detective is, was that person called and was that person listed? Now, when it comes to them testifying and all of that in court, you can answer that, but it's basically a hard no. It's confidential.
Generally, no.
Generally,
We're
a no.
drugged. Yeah. Valerie usually tries to get us out of it.
But I try as much as I can to get some of that initial information. And if it's available, then I will include it.
I'm bringing that up, I'm sorry, or when I'm wearing my prosecution hat, because the reality of domestic violence is that on scene, a victim, obviously in the heat of the moment, and raw, they will tell us what happened, and they will say, what happened. But then reality sets in 2 days, 3 days later, and for whatever reason, whether it's fear, whether it's regrets, whether it's financial dependency, whatever it is, they may recant, what they say. And it's to our office, they no longer want to prosecute, or they say the officers got it wrong, they didn't really understand what I was trying to say. So how does the mobile response team fit into that? And at the moment, they wanted to speak to you, they gave you a statement that later differs, so.
So from our perspective on scene, we do have that confidentiality where we cannot share information with law enforcement. And sometimes it frustrates them a little bit because they're sharing everything with us. And it's basically like, no, sorry, we can't share a lot back unless the victim or the survivor signs a release with us. And so if they sign a release with us, then we're able to kind of collaborate and share back and forth information to an extent. We're really asking them, what is it that you are comfortable with us sharing? Are you comfortable being there and we can support you while you share? And when we're on scene, I know I'm not sharing, our team is not sharing information with the officers. Like Anna mentioned, we had a strangulation survivor and she had defecated and urinated on herself, and the undergarments were still in the home, and so that's evidence. And I, have been doing this long enough that I recognize evidence. I recognize when there's torn and bloody clothes and things. And so I will educate the client or the survivor and let them know this is really important information. I can't share it with the officer. And we work with them if they want to and get them, we debunk a lot of the myths for them. We help them understand the process so that they're comfortable enough to share that information with the law enforcement officer on scene. And so it kind of takes the pressure off of us. It helps us meet our confidentiality mandate. And then it's starting to give them a little bit of power back. And there are times where they're saying, no, I recognize everything that you're telling me. I appreciate the information, but I'm not comfortable sharing this information. And there's times where you have to walk away and be like, man, that would be a slam dunk for prosecution. And we can't share that. And so it's frustrating, I think, on all angles for, those of us that are doing this day in and day out, but we're really trying to approach this from a client-centered perspective and not take that from them. So much has already been taken that we don't want to come in there and create a bigger issue. Yes.
How common is that they actually shine?
that they actually sign the confidentiality to share information? Is it common?
Pretty common.
Pretty common.
Yeah, but it usually happens on the tail end when they're in case management. We're not walking around with release of information out on scene for our crisis team. It's basically like, okay, let's verbal off, like, okay, like this is gonna do for now, because we're really pivoting in the moment when we are getting these things. And so they will pretty frequently sign them when they start to work with case management.
I'm sure already there's a lot of questions, so I did want to just, if you want to hold them till the end, and that way we can hear from everyone, and then we can open it to Q&A. But there was something that Albert mentioned about planting seeds that I did want to share. The unique part about the response team is like they're there on scene, they handle the crisis, and then that's the end of their role with this family, this victim. And so it is unique in that they are also part of our bigger domestic violence umbrella of services with SBCS. They participate in our shelter safety checks. And so sometimes they'll not know that, okay, that victim did follow through with services with the day team. They took those steps and they followed through with the resources. And then they might go do safety checks at our shelter and be like, oh my gosh, I was on scene at your home in the crisis, and now they're at our shelter. So it kind of comes full circle because they don't get to hear the outcome of every scenario. So that's something unique I wanted to share, that when we talk about success stories, like we do see it from point of the incident all the way to maybe a family getting stably housed after shelter, going through transitional housing, and then going into one of our voucher programs. So it kind of comes full circle. So I did want to move on to Nayeli, or did you have something you wanted to say?
No, I was gonna talk about, I had one incident where we had to get verbal consent. I responded to the hospital, so it's not unusual of us to get called to the hospital by law enforcement. And my victim disclosed that she was raped violently. And so when we were done, I asked her, does she feel comfortable, disclosing this to law enforcement? Because, this is big. We went back and forth for a while, and eventually she said, yes, I'm okay with telling officers. So therefore I was able to then help her report the rape. And at that time, while she was still at the hospital, while everything was still fresh, while her clothes was still right there that had been removed by doctors. So the chain of custody of the evidence was all still there. So sometimes in the heat of the moment, if we see something that officers should know about, we do try to explain why it could be important. It could help her case. It could help her safety. It could. And so then she was then transported to Palomar, and then I followed officers to Palomar. Very longer night for me, but because then I transported her back home, because officers can take her there, but they don't stay. So then I stayed and then transported her home. So, yeah.
So Nayeli is part of our day team. As they mentioned, they're co-located at Chula Vista Police Department, which is another unique component of our program. So they do get to, have a lot of interaction throughout the day, support each other in ways that we need that to happen. And so I just wanted to pass it on to you now to share what are your next steps once you get, we have a database that the night team is inputting, painting a picture of what they saw on scene and the information that was gathered. They get basic demographic information from the survivor. That's all put into a database, and then reports are pulled every morning by our admin assistant, Valerie back there, and they're assigned cases. And so that's their case now to take on and connect to resources. So Nayeli is part of that team.
So every morning after Valerie pulls the reports, we get a case note, a beautiful case note. And then at the end, they tell us a little bit about the conversation that they had. Were they interested in services? Were they in distress still when they left? Were they really interested in only legal aid, only counseling, or were they completely did not want anything? And that, before I even do anything, before I pick up the phone and call them, I have to read that. That gives me a very good picture of who am I gonna talk to on the other end. They go onto scene when it's very fresh. Officers are there. maybe they're still in the clothes that the incident happened in. A lot can change within when the incident happens and when we get the call. Maybe perpetrator was released from jail, he posted bail, he's back in the home, sweet talked him. I'm never gonna do this again. Gave the person another chance. Maybe they fled. Maybe they changed their number. Maybe perpetrator shut down their phone. So a lot can happen within the time that they respond to when I get the case. So when I call our victim, I always make sure the first thing that I say is, "Hi, my name is Nayeli. I'm with SPCS. I got the case from whatever agency. Are you safe and can you speak?" I've gotten times where a perpetrator picks up the phone and it's someone I'm not expecting, and then I have to play it off.
And we panic.
And we're like, oh, just tell the person I'll call later. Oh, it was for a meeting. Things shift a lot, and now safety is my main concern. We have to make sure that they're safe and free to talk, and that they're able to have that conversation. Maybe they're at work, maybe they're at home with their children. They don't want them to know about what happened. So I make sure that whenever I call someone, they pick up, that they're able to have that conversation. Whenever they let me know that they can't have that conversation, I first thing I ask them, "How are you doing?" They might completely shut me down at that point. Say, "I'm good, I don't need anything, I'm good." They might be very acquainted with our program and know what SPCS is. Maybe they've already had this conversation 9 times before, and they're not ready to make that decision at that point, and that is totally okay. My role then as a case manager and as an advocate is to keep planting that seed. So let's say that I call someone and they're interested in services, then I can provide them with whatever the situation might need. Maybe they're interested in counseling or a temporary restraining order, getting connected with legal aid for child custody, divorce, anything like that. Immigration. Maybe their car was hit during the incident, victims compensation. I kind of am the pointer person to send all these referrals. One of the biggest referrals that we send is for counseling. That is one of the biggest things that SPCS offers, is a lot of counseling, group counseling, individual counseling, family counseling. It's all free. So that's one of the things that if somebody I'm calling and they're not interested in anything, maybe they're interested in some counseling, and we can start that cycle ad. So maybe down the line, if this ever happens again, they have the right tools and maybe they're ready to make that decision then. We do have a very good partnership with our detectives. So a lot of them have a lot of questions of what's the next step? How can I drop those charges, or how can I continue with that process? And we'll let them know, hey, I know a detective's gonna reach out to you within the next couple of days. If you have any questions or you can't reach your detective, we can go ahead and work together. A lot of what we do is hear what our clients, where they're at, and step in. One of the biggest things that we do is case management. So once our victims are maybe a little bit more comfortable with us, and maybe they want a little bit more ongoing services, such as those legal referrals, having someone go to court with them, have somebody help them through their housing situation. We get them to come in for an intake so they can start in our case management. Through our case management, we can do a lot. Sometimes I work with clients for up to a year and try to get them stabilized through housing, I walk them through a whole case with the DA, with the detective. So we really see a case through, and it really is victim-centered, what they're ready to do at that moment. And unfortunately, sometimes they're not ready to do much, and that is okay. And we meet, our clients where they are. So we're trying to think anything else.
No,
I think
just a couple of
beauty-
things came to mind.
The beauty of, and I'm pointing back there because our therapist is back there. The beauty of us keeping a lot of these resources in-house is if they initially tell the advocates, I'm good, I just want some counseling. Then they are maybe starting with our counseling with our therapist, and they've been in counseling for a while and they feel more confident and a little bit better. Then they're like, actually, you know what? They have a lot more need, a higher need for a lot of services. And so at that point, our therapists can reach back out to the case managers and they can loop in the case manager to step in and provide that assistance. Then it'll transfer over. They may need something with CBPD. And so it's really beautiful that we keep a lot of this in-house.
One other thing I wanted to mention is through our database, we can see incidents where we have been to the same home maybe 5, 6 times. And you can see that Mia went there, and then the next time Albert went there, and then Mia was back the next time. So we have this historical context to go off of. And so like Nayeli mentioned, they might not have been ready that first time, but by the 5th time we've gone out and they've heard our spiel, they're like, okay, I think maybe I'm ready to participate in this aspect of your services. And another thing that our team does a really great job of, we do a lot of court accompaniments, providing safety items. So we buy a lot of Ring cameras, providing like new locks for windows. We've had a lot of cars get damaged. When they come back to victimize, they're still upset. Maybe they're out of the home, but they've slashed tires or they've broken windshields, and we have dollars through different grants that we have that we're able to address all those needs. So I'm going to move on to Marcy, because I know one of the other things I mentioned is that we are co-located at Chula Vista PD. And so just wanted to hear from Marcy, how does that benefit the client and then our relationship between our team and you?
So I think the biggest bonus for us and law enforcement is that relationship that we get to cultivate every day. We see them, we pass them in the hallway. Freddie, we're always running from Freddie because he usually comes and drops big bombs on our desk and it's a lot of work. And we're like, no, it's Freddie. But that relationship is there. We have really great rapport with the officers. And so they get to know us, we get to know them, and they know our specialties, we know their specialties, and can really get a lot done for the clients. None of us have any problems going up and talking to the detectives. We know them all. We're like, hey, this client just signed a release. Can you tell us where the criminal case is going? Has it been sent over to the DA? They'll come and they'll ask us, hey, we are having a hard time getting hold of this client. We can't tell them if we've gotten a hold of them, but we can make an effort to reach out if it's been sent over to us, and we can try to get a hold of them as well. So it's kind of like a team, like we're all coming at them from all different angles, and maybe the law enforcement angle is going to work, maybe the advocacy angle is going to work. There's usually something that will get them interested in services, whether it be us or the officers. And so I think that relationship is really great, and we can all kind of stay abreast of any changes. I go to the roll calls, and it's really easy for me to just jump in when it's a different team and provide any kind of updates on the team, any kind of changes for us. They can provide us any kind of changes that happen in their policies or their protocols. So I think that's really great. We're a lot more successful when we tackle it as a team, I think. And so a lot of the times phones are broken during incidents, perpetrators turn off the phones. We can go up and say, hey, have you heard from so-and-so? And they have a new number. And so it's like a holiday for us. We're like, yay, we have a number, and then we all get to work. We've tried really hard to get a hold of these people and nothing has worked. There'll be really serious incidents where like maybe we were on the phone with someone and we heard an incident taking place, and I'm like, oh gosh, Freddie's the first. He'll jump in a car and go see if someone's safe. He has no problems, going over to the house and seeing what the heck is going on, and checking in with them, going up to work and saying, hey, we haven't heard from you. We really, like Geico, we want to talk to you about your car insurance, but we want to talk to you about your TV. And so I think it's really great that, Chula Vista PD has such progressive policies when it comes to domestic violence. They call us for everything just about, and it's a great partnership, I think, from that aspect. We are now on scene. I mean, we're not only on scene, but we're at the PD. And so if there's walk-ins that come into the PD, we just walk out to the lobby and, we're there. It helps the officers get back to 10-8 quicker. They're not waiting on scene for us. We're there to provide all those services right there in the moment. And they don't have to, wait, and we don't have to jump around and wait. We have everything right there. And then CBPD now has their forensic room so that they can do Daffy's on scene. And so the advocates can go up and be supportive and be, provide advocacy during those Daffy exams. And so I think all of those work really well so that we are much more successful than just cold calling somebody from a referral and saying, hey, how you doing? Like, are you okay? Well, that's great. And I just feel like if we weren't there and working together as a team, that we would not be as successful.
If I could, okay, so we're batting 1,000 because we've only done 2. So we're 2 for 2. But we have domestic assault forensic exams that are done throughout the county at Palomar, just like a sexual assault exam, forensic exam. We've been able to get them now to be done at the Chula Vista PD, so nurses respond out to us, which for a victim, that's about a 50-minute drive usually, depending on where they are in Chula Vista, to get up to Poway and then come back, and all the dynamics that come with that, transportation, childcare, all of that. So now they get to just drive to the police department. But the best part about that is that now I could have a lab technician for any kind of evidence that they might bring. I get to have the advocates there for any kind of follow-up services or immediate kind of needs that might be had there. I get to meet with them and the nurse responds. So now we've taken something that could take about a week or 2 into a 2 to 3 hour process. We're 2 for 2. I'm hoping we're going to continue to be, more, and even, and I won't get into a lot of the prosecution stuff, but even the victims buy-in. I just got the first email from the DA saying, hey, we're going to court. And I have a voicemail from the victim going, hey, I want to know, is there anything going on with my case? Which is usually the opposite. But now, she spent 3 hours with Nayeli after hours. So thank you for that. The nurse came all the way down from Encinitas. Everybody just got to share like, hey, we're here for you. And we're doing this. She goes, this is like after 5 p.m. Aren't you supposed to go home? We're not going home. We're going to do this for you. And the fact that they were able to be there for that, I mean, it was just a game changer.
And just to say, Albert was the one that responded to the call back in December, the first incident, and her phone number was changed. I wasn't able to reach out to her back then. Another incident happened a couple of weeks ago. Albert again went out to scene, and in the case, go ahead, in the hospital.
Emergency room.
Yeah, and in the case note it says, victim said, oh my God, I remember you. I remember every single thing that you told me was gonna happen, happened. He came back, he told me he was gonna change, and then they're back in the same exact position. And then that's when I tried to reach her again, I couldn't. Buddy reached out to me saying, hey, she's coming in for a Daffy, please. I think you gave me like a 10-minute warning.
And she's here. Can you stay?
And I was able to finally talk to her, and she was like, wait, you're the one that's leaving me the messages. And I'm like, it's me, it's in the flesh. And I was able to talk to her, sit with her throughout the whole process. A Daffy is very intrusive, and it was the first one I sat in. So it was very hard to kind of just be there, sit with her, and support her. But at the end of the day, we got her connected to very needed counseling that she needed. And I couldn't do that without Albert, without Freddie. It's a
As a
very
team.
good, as a team.
A team there.
Yeah.
And just, so to just give you a little bit of background, it was a very violent event. And the first time it was violent, the second time it was worse. And one of the things that I mentioned to her, this is going to get worse before it gets better. It's going to be increasing. And at that time, I guess she didn't believe me. I gave her the red flags, the 17 red flags, and explained to her 3 or more of these red flags. You're gonna get them. That person has a probability of being violent against you, and he's gonna blame it all on you. When I walked into the emergency room, and it was like full of curtains, literally full of curtains. The officer pulled the curtains, and she goes, "I remember you. Everything you told me was going to happen, happened." And then we follow up, and the rest of the team, like you said, we're all a team, and it's working. He's away.
He's in custody right now.
So then the final thing was our MDT, which is our multidisciplinary team meeting, and Selena from the district attorney's office, Freddie, myself, Alicia, usually an advocate comes who's representing the client, they're supporting the client. Rebecca from the Sheriff's Department, the probation, Maria, Gina, I don't know what you go, usually your email, but Gina from probation. Lots of us are getting together once a month to hear from a victim. We have a survivor come in and share their story. And we usually try as a team to pinpoint a really specific type of client who's having lots of problems in lots of different areas. Maybe having a hard time having their restraining order served, or maybe there's lots of restraining order violations. Maybe the person's a fugitive and we have to connect them to the fugitive task force. There's all kinds of things that we've been able to get accomplished through this team meeting. And so I think a survivor story is powerful when they're telling you, but when there's a group of us and they're telling you in person and, you know, versus reading it from a report, it's that much more impactful. And not that we're not motivated, but it really gets us like, okay, this is it. This is game time. We really have to get something done for this person. And so I think that's one of the other ways that we all kind of collaborate in the beauty. It's held at Chula Vista Police Department. So
Yeah, a couple of years prior to COVID, DV Council did a spotlight on the HRTs, the high risk team. And so in the South, we just call it different. It's our multidisciplinary team. And so DAs is at part of the team at that table. So I did want to allow Selena a chance to contribute, just sharing like what are some things that are gaps that maybe we are able to help each other fill in when we're supporting these victims.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm a district attorney, victim advocate, which is very different than everyone here. We have our first responders, our second responders, I call them, and I consider myself the third responder. Since by the time I reach out, the survivors had a few days to process everything that's happened. And they may or may not, you know where they're at mentally with how to feel about the abuser, the case, etc. Typically by the time I reach out, South Bay Community Services has already reached out to offer services. And if for some reason they haven't, not kidding, I have Marcy's number on speed dial and I will call her to find out if a case manager has been assigned, if there's any services that we could offer. Really, I contact Marcy or anybody at South Bay just to make sure that we're not duplicating services since it can be kind of overwhelming. But my main role is to be a middle person between detectives and district attorneys, case managers, so that victims and survivors can understand the criminal justice system. That is, if they're on board. We're available to accompany survivors to court. We provide court support animals. Really just help them understand the process, since it's usually their first time going through something like this and it's very overwhelming and sometimes really scary for them. And so we're there to just offer support in the criminal justice aspect of it. But we do also offer a lot of resources and referrals, which our number one has always been South Bay Community Services, since they're very responsive. They're usually there on scene, so they're already familiar with someone. And then just, connecting them, answering questions about the investigation, the status of the case, the detectives at Chula Vista PD and National City PD, Sheriff's Department, all the South Bay agencies. They're very responsive, very communicative. They're really good about getting back to survivors and just keeping them up to date on the status of the investigation. If unfortunately there's not enough to move forward with prosecution, then we are able to provide support at that meeting where we let them know. It's never just going to be like a, hey, sorry, we can't press charges. It's going to be like an actual meeting where we will explain to them why we can't. We'll offer services. Unfortunately, as us advocates, I'm one of two advocates in the South Bay. We don't have the confidentiality that South Bay Community Services has, so there's a lot of legal obstacles there. But we are there to provide support at any meetings, any court hearings, besides TRO hearings. We only do criminal court support hearings. But that's pretty much it. I mean, they're our number one agency that we refer domestic violence survivors to.
It's a great partnership because you know what's going on with the criminal case.
Yes.
You know, prior to sending that over to the DA, what you sent over. And so we're not consistently all having to speak with the victim and asking them over and over and over again to retell their story or to continue to provide services. You know, as long as they're willing to sign a release, we can all communicate. And that's also the beauty of the advocates on scene, why they talk to the officers and provide the case note to Nayeli, and like, we're not wanting to consistently have them retell us. So I think that's a beauty of our partnership. You know what's going on with the criminal side, you know what you send over to the district attorney, and we get our updates that way, instead of calling around or wondering or saying, hey, can you reach out to your detective, or can you reach out to your DA victim advocate? We can stay in the loop that way if the client is interested in us doing that for them.
So we do a lot in the South. We're busy. I did want to give a chance for questions. If anybody has any for the panel.
Covered it all.
We were thorough. All right. I did want to give a plug that, like Claudia mentioned earlier, we are going to be starting a South Region subcommittee of the DV Council. We're aiming to have our first meeting in June, so I'll just have that update go out to the larger group once we have the location set. So that'll be.
I have a question for the support group here.
Mhm.
Is this currently happening?
Yeah.
My question is, it says survivors of domestic violence. What happens if a person wants to attend and doesn't, like, doesn't feel like this, doesn't feel he's a survivor, but she's like, shy, and she wants to try she thinks that she's in domestic violence, but she's not a survivor yet. So
We definitely have, the way that we talk about it is, it's a support group. So
Okay.
even if you're not ready to.
okay, yeah, this
Yeah.
is what I'm. Okay.
They don't have to not be in the.
Yeah.
relationship,
Okay.
if that's what you-
Yes.
I think Brooklyn had somebody in her group before that was like, I'm not a victim, I'm not a survivor, I'm just here. And so it was really weird for us, but people identify in all different types of ways. And so we meet them where they're at and basically
Right.
welcome everyone. The one thing that we have to work really hard is to not have perpetrators in there with the survivors. And so sometimes people are pretty tricky, and it takes a lot to make sure that we're maintaining those boundaries and looking out for our victims and our survivors.
And we have that in English and Spanish.
Yes.
That's support.
Oh, that's great. Thank you.
Can others that do not live in Chula Vista benefit from your services?
Yes. And none of our services require the police report, with the exception of the response team. They only go to the 911 calls. They're not going, like the number I mentioned that we get called is not open to the public. So civilians can't just say, hey, I'm having an incident. I'm over. That's.
The one thing we didn't mention is the agency has an 800 number that's after hours. And so anybody can call that, and anybody can get connected with our response team 24/7. They just can't respond out. They can't go out. Like if somebody's calling from a hospital, they aren't allowed to go out without the officers. And so anybody can talk to an advocate 24/7. They just might not get that immediate response.
It's on.
How do you handle other languages like Filipino or Korean or any Asian languages?
Sure. We have a member of our response team who speaks Tagalog. We have members who speak Spanish as well.
And then I got called to a case where the victim spoke Mandarin. And so then we called the translation line. And I was able to provide services via the translator.
If we're on scene, officers have the ability, like if it's a deaf client, somebody that needs a translator, they're able to call somebody out as well. And so those calls just run a lot longer for everybody because a translator can only work for a certain amount of time before they have to switch out. And so those are a lot more involved, but they have the ability to call somebody out as well.
And then our advocate team can schedule appointments with translation as well. Any other questions?
I would make a plug, if you are an organization team that works in South Bay, you would like to be part of our South Bay coalition, please, you can email mentioned, we all coordinate here in South Bay to provide that village. I mean, look at how amazing they're doing. And just having the support of what you all do here would just enhance and take it to the next level. So that is the purpose of forming this coalition, not to supplant or replace, but to enhance what we do already. And the prevention piece, doing this, doing trainings throughout South Bay to get the word out. And we want you to be part of it. So definitely reach out if you want to be part of the coalition. We welcome you and we would love to have you, as Annalise has said, first meeting can be.
Also, if you're a service provider and you're working with someone who has a case that originates down in the South Bay, and you feel like MDT might be something that they would need or could benefit from, you're always able to reach out to me as well, and we can talk about their needs and see if we're able to bring them to MDT. So we don't have an official referral form, but we are open to hearing from other people. And I brought a stack of cards over there with my number on it. Feel free to email me or call, and we can have a longer conversation about MDT and if it would benefit your client.
I would like to know, how do you all collaborate with like the Family Justice Center and like One Safe Place? Would that be something that's similar to what you all are accomplishing here in South region?
Well, yes, Sarah is part of one of our collaborative. Sarah is the program director, right, at Family Justice Center in Central, and then Claudia and I email frequently, so we're connected. For shelter, we get hotline calls seeking housing control. So if in the DV world, I guess you would say in the service provider world, we do coordinate frequently.
And also we call each other sibling centers. So if somebody from Chula Vista were to call One Safe Place, naturally we say, you know, your safe place is downtown, it's much closer to you, and vice versa. So there's plenty of work for all of us. And so definitely it makes more sense for your safe place to be the Family Justice Center that services South, only, you know, proximity. It's a long way to San Marcos. I know, I drove it. So it's again, you know, benefits to have those wraparound services right, you know, downtown.
I think someone mentioned it. The only thing is we just try together to make sure we're not duplicating services. So if they're already receiving therapy with them or getting connected to legal services through them, then we're not gonna overlap in that regard.
We have advocates from the Family Justice Centers call us, and they'll be there with the survivor, and they're just that warm handoff. Like maybe the survivor isn't ready to make the phone call themselves, but they're wanting to come down to South Bay. They're wanting to, you know, or maybe they have relocated down to South Bay and it doesn't make sense for them to drive up north for therapy. So the advocates, we all kind of know what everybody does, and the advocate from the Family Justice Center will support them in making that phone call to us to connect them to closer resources like Claudia was sharing.
What about care with military?
They're actually, they are part of our MDT. We have, I forget what the position is.
So I used to work for the Family Advocacy Program,
Oh, cool.
and
Yeah.
I still have a lot of contact with the advocates on base. And so when it's a military case, we are educating them about the thought process, about things that go on over on base, getting them connected to an advocate on base for different things. They help them with a very specific set of things. So we have a unique, I guess, in me. I network with my old peeps. So they're always contacting us. Like the military has very limited things that they can provide for survivors. They can't get them into shelters. They can't, you know, all they can do is connect them to a provider. And so we work with them frequently because we do have a lot of military cases.
Yeah.
Yep.
Especially on these.
Last question. So what about our friends across the border? There are victims of domestic violence in Tijuana or various port cities. Can they cross over to get services?
Well, we're not going to pick them up and cross them. Disclaimer, if they're here and, you know, they're planning to come here and they're able to come here, we don't say no because you are from Tijuana, you can't partake in our services. We actually do a lot of work with Latin American countries, immigration process. We connect them to a lot of providers. The problem comes in is a lot of times they're courtesy reports that Chula Vista PD will take because they've crossed, the violence may have happened in Tijuana. And so that's not necessarily a crime that PD can, you know, do a full-blown report. There's charges. So they'll do a courtesy report and they will call us out. As long as they're standing by on scene, we're able to go and provide those services if they're in the hospital. It is challenging sometimes because now they're over here, the charge, you know, there's no charges. Are they able to get a restraining order based on the fact that all of this happened in Tijuana? So it's challenging for sure. Like we sit on duty fatality review team, and I shared a couple of weeks ago, it's a lot like the elder population. They need so many long ongoing services that it's challenging, but we do provide services to quite a lot of folks that have come over here. They're here now and need the support. So it's just a different set of services sometimes that we're focused on.
And just to add,
Questions.
oh no, and to add on to that for our emergency shelter, transitional housing, we don't require, I think some shelters maybe require a police report or a restraining order, and we don't require those things. So.
It's domestic violence, what you define as domestic violence is between our intimate partners, or what if an adult son is beating on their elderly parents or.
So we're now known as FVRT, Family Violence Response Team, and not necessarily Domestic Violence Response Team. And so we kind of made that change about 8 years ago, 9 years ago, and that's actually how Mia and I came onto the team. We started working on a different program for youth. And so if they're a survivor of abuse or they're a victim of abuse, we're not really necessarily saying, oh, you don't fit our, you know, we have a lot of elder cases where it's the son. And so we're providing the same support and the same resources. It does get a little tricky sometimes when we do our legal referral because our grants and our funding streams, some of them are different, and they say, oh, well, you know, this has to be for domestic violence. And so we kind of know how to navigate and where to go. And if we can't provide that service in-house, we'll be reaching out to other providers to provide that specific service for family violence. Our agency has a youth prevention intervention team. And so I was out with patrol on Friday, and, you know, juveniles were beating on mom, and they said, oh, Marcy, perfect, you're here. Can you come talk to this family? And I was like, oh, man. And so talking to them about, you know, referrals for our CAT program, which is the step prior to them getting arrested, to the juvenile getting arrested. And so it's great that we have all these programs and we can basically find somewhere for this family to go. Our agency is about taking care of the family. And so that's really what our programming is designed to do. We have a program that is co-located at Child Welfare Service, gives a very different perspective for us on the domestic violence side. We collaborate to get these folks into parenting classes. And so I think we take care of the entire family, whatever that looks like.
And yeah, what we shared today is just under our umbrella of
For
DV
DV.
services. SBCS as an agency has over 400 employees, I think, a lot of different programming. We have children's mental health. We have a therapeutic preschool actually for children who have been exposed to family trauma. And that's in the Chula Vista area. It's free. It's an 8-hour preschool. So that's something also really unique to our agency. We have a lot of youth services. I'm sure a whole clinical department where we have a lot to offer the families, and our model is really the wraparound model that we can support in looking at all their needs. Anything else? I know we wanted to offer time for networking too, if that's the time. Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah.
So I'm just hearing, obviously, there's a lot of secondary trauma
for you all who respond. So has there anything been created or put into place for first, second, third responders as far as care programs for you all?
I can speak to what we do. We have a clinical team of clinical supervisors, and we all are required to attend clinical supervision. So that's where we can really talk about the things that we've seen, talk about how it's affected us. We have an EAP program, so we have support for ourselves. We focus a lot. I think my whole last meeting with these guys last week was all on self-care and identifying when we're in distress. And so I think we do a pretty good job. Most of our lunchtime is like unloading, like, oh my God. And so, but there are times where we're out on scene and they have us climbing around in the river bottom and doing all kinds of things. And so I'm giving Freddie a hard time, but there are things that stick with you for sure. And we're like she was saying, we don't always identify that in the moment, but we're a pretty tight, close-knit team. And I'm like, ooh, I think something's going on here. Or like even my team, oh my gosh, boss, are you all right? Oh yeah. And so we have the resources to us, available to us to take care of that trauma when we get exposed to it. But it's hard. We see just the same thing that they see for the most part, after the incident in the hospital. So I was with Nayeli to her first hospital call when the victim was stabbed, and the knife was the knife still in him?
The knife had just been removed from the person.
Yeah.
And it was my first hospital call. She was like, "You're coming with me." And I was like, "All right," wide-eyed. And I remember that drive, she was driving, and there was so much traffic, and I just remember just sitting there on the verge of tears because I had never seen anything like that in my life, and that was within the first couple of months of me joining the team. So since then, I can tell you I've seen worse things, but I am very grateful to have a team that is supportive, a team that takes care of me, and I feel very supportive and very, very thankful for what we do and how our team responds to that trauma.
Do you want to share your first 20 minutes on the job, Carlos?
Oh.
Yes, I'll share. So first day on the job, I get to the office and my mind is, okay, we're probably gonna do orientation. And then literally I was maybe 1 or 2 minutes inside the office and Marcy's like, okay, we're gonna go on a call. And I was like, okay. Me being naive, making small talk with my new boss, like in the car. And then we get there, it was like, was it in Hillcrest? Emergency room. I'm there, I'm like, I'm here, like what's going on? And Marcy obviously leads away, I'm just with her. And I see like they open the curtain and like this client is like bruised, she's missing hair, like she's very bad, like very physical, like state and very emotional. And yeah, like that was like my first
20 minutes on the job.
Introduction to this job. And then after that, like interaction, we get in the car and Marcy's like, "You're not quitting, right?" And I'm like, "No, I'm all for it." I've been here ever since.
Well, we all have our days that we cover the day shift, and so that happened to be my day. And I was like, I usually don't get calls on my day. I'm going to train Carlos, and no, call, and Carlos went. I put him through the boot camp. Like if they can make it through that, they can make it through anything.
All right, well, can we give a round of applause? Last 10, 15 minutes, if you all want to connect with each other, ask anything.